two of our guests, Mr. Charrandass Persaud and attorney at law, Mr. Selwyn Pieters. Both of these gentlemen currently, one is in hiding still in Canada, and, and, and our brother, Mr. Selwyn Pieters, obviously, he has been freedom fight always, always. It is probably what is closest to him to ensure that human rights are always on top of everybody's agenda. Let me welcome both of you gentlemen to room 592 tonight. Selwyn, welcome to you, my brother, once again. And Charan, welcome once again, sir.
Yoke, thank you very much. And thank you to the viewers. A pleasant good evening to all of you. I hope you can hear me and see me. I try to look a little presentable.
Great. Wonderful.
Out of hiding.
Good, good, good. Selwyn, welcome to you, my brother.
Yes, good evening, Dr. Yoga, and good evening, Charrandass. You're liberated.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you. You know you helped.
So great. So ladies and gentlemen, I want us to get on with our discussion tonight, of course, with these two gentlemen here, both of them attorneys at law. One of them would have tried to dabble in politics until he realized the difference between yes and no at the end of an elbow. And the other one, of course, having been Mr. Persaud, you know, I have to keep on putting this at you. I'm sorry, but you know, I'm in one of those jovial moods tonight, so you'll get more than taps tonight from both me and Selwyn, I must tell you. But ladies and gentlemen, on a serious note, we're still in week one of the new government having been sworn into place. And in this week one, we are still seeing remnants of these 155 days. Remember, over 155 days, you've had persons who did not want to give up office. They did not want to give up their hold to the office. Whatever they thought they could have gotten out of staying longer in power, they stayed in power. And today we are seeing them holding on to state assets and holding on to various parts of the state in one way or another, frustrating the process. So ladies and gentlemen, we want to talk about some of those things. In addition, we want to, of course, discuss some of the challenges that the new government might be facing, and as well to ask Mr. Persaud and Mr. Pieters their opinion of post-declaration day to now. Gentlemen, I want to come to this discussion first. And Charan, I'll let you speak first. Your thoughts on, you know, the day. I mean, everybody thought that maybe even after declaration, something might have happened. It didn't. The APNO AFC basically conceded, accepted the declaration. They moved on, moved out of office. Immediately thereupon, there was a swearing in of the new president. And within 72 hours, he would have sworn in his cabinet. Your views of what would have transpired in the last 3 days, Mr. Charrandass Persaud.
Yog, and to the viewers out there, to me, it happened not like clockwork, but with precision. Remember, the meeting was supposed to have been at 10 in the morning. Of course, Lowenfield did not show up with his report, and so no declaration was made. And then it was adjourned for 2 o'clock. But I was told that we were all aware that there was some arrangement initiated by the chairman of GCOM to have the opposition leader then, Dr. Jagdeo, and the caretaker president, Mr. Granger, have a conversation. Why, I don't know. But of course, the response that he got from Dr. Jagdeo was any discussion on the way forward would be after the declaration was made. That was the end of that proposed or supposed meeting. Mm-hmm. And what happened next was, to me, I think it was all in the making, because in a matter of 2.5 hours, not only was the declaration, the report handed in, the declaration was made, and the Chancellor acting was notified, and she was ready. The now president, well, let's just say Dr. Ali, was ready with his team. All the heads of the military, all the heads of the missions, the foreign missions in Ghana, they were all ready. And that swearing was done like I said precision timing was involved there. But
But
that,
the people who are being sworn in, they had 155 days to prepare for that, right?
that is so true. That is so true. But again, you'd expect once Lowenfield didn't show up with his report in the morning, something might happen in the afternoon for the 2 o'clock session, but nothing happened. And I'm guessing.
What's your opinion of the cabinet that was sworn in?
It's quite a diverse cabinet, and I'll say that the youngest, and I know her really well, is the daughter of the late Mr. Hokum Chand. She is an attorney at law practicing, and amongst the older heads, we have Robson Ben as Minister of Public Security. Miss Hokum Chand, or Sonia Parag is her last name, is the Minister in charge of Ministry of Public Service. So, and then you have these youngsters involved there, Colin Kroll, Dr. Vindi Persaud, a couple of the other youngsters. I can't remember all the names off the top of my head. But it's quite a mixture.
Okay, great.
Excellent combination.
Great. Selwyn, over to you, sir. But most particularly, what would have been Selwyn Pieters' thoughts because of the Declaration Day? Because here is where I'm coming from. One of the things that Madam Chairman did not leave to chance was to call the Chancellor and say, here is my declaration. Or should I not leave it to chance for word to go out to the public that she has made a declaration? It was in writing, released immediately to the public. It was, you've seen the side of a chairman on the one day that we haven't seen for 155 days. Yours or Selwyn?
Well, she moved with alacrity that day, and I have to admit that the moving parts were so quick. I think it caught most of us by surprise. By 4:30 p.m. there was the swearing in. So, you know, it between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. the machinery of GCOM and the machinery of state move with lightning speed, and you know, we have to commend everyone that was involved in that process on that day, and we have to be thankful because, you know, it was a difficult time and a struggle for all of us over these 153 days, Yo.
Thank you, Selwyn. So here is another question that I have for you, Selwyn. In terms of the swearing in itself of the president, from a legal perspective, Selwyn, has everything been done according to how it ought to be done? Were there any missing things you think that we can hope to not see coming up as a court challenge from anybody soon?
No, I think all the protocols were followed. I think, you know, the president, the former president, David Granger, his protocol people moved over to the new president. So they would have, the lieutenant colonel who was in charge of protocol, he was the person who was guiding the proceedings. The chancellor was there. Right. You know, all the heads of the joint services were there. The diplomats were there. Everything went according to protocol for the swearing in as it was. The inauguration takes place on Saturday, where there'll be more pomp and circumstance. Mm-hmm. But I mean, the key people were sworn in that day. The Attorney General, who is extremely important in government, a vice president, right, and somebody who will be dealing with parliamentary affairs, which is to liaise with the opposition and get the parliament moving. So I think I'm not going to criticize anything that occurred on that day. I mean, you know, nothing is perfect, but it proceeded smoothly.
Great. So, gentlemen, I just want to ask your patience for 60 seconds, not more than that, but the 60 seconds doesn't start now. I'll tell you when it starts. You see, I have to be careful. There's Charrandass in the house. Ladies and gentlemen, today has shown something that we have to be aware of. And I have a little view that I want to share with everybody. This viewpoint, I'll express in 60 seconds. It brings no liability to the publisher of Kaito Reader or Kaito News. This is mine. Yog Mahadev's viewpoint. 60 seconds start now, turn. The PNC APNU AC lost their place in the National Assembly since 2018, more than 518 days ago. They lost the elections more than 155 days ago. Let us forget the 500 days, ladies and gentlemen. For more than 155 days, they knew they lost the election. They knew for 155 days that they must vacate government properties, government premises. Every day in this country is a brand new drama. They wanted to retain power. Now they want to retain government premises. Some of them, taxpayers, it seems, are being continuously taken for a ride. Taxpayers, according to some who want to retain state houses, they want the taxpayers to continue to pay for them, for their maids, for their gas, for their transport, for their everything. And we must also pay for the incoming ministers. Yog Mahadeo's view, ladies and gentlemen, is that all contracts entered into after March 2nd, 2020 ought to be examined with different lenses. One that looks at the motive, the intent of the contracting parties, especially as it inherently ties an unwitting population, a party to those contracts that do not have a voice in the face of the law or in the courts, even though they're a party. All job appointments, all board appointments, all houses, all assets given, allocated after March 2nd, one has to question where is integrity and honesty in such deals, regardless of who is in government. After an election is lost, the assets needs to stay sacrosanct. I say, and my opinion is, leave the state houses, give it up, go on. You lost the elections. Do not hold on to state properties. What more notice you need beyond the 155 days? Ladies and gentlemen.
Yog, if I may.
1 second, Charan. It is something serious, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to ask Charan and Selwyn's opinion of what I just said. But taxpayers cannot be paying for two sets of persons. It is bad, it is immoral, it is wrong. And persons, I posted on social media, the salaries they were collecting since March, let's give them up to March 10th. The salaries even since then, I would want to ask that we, as a people, we need to look back at some of these things. Ladies and gentlemen, let me remind you, you are in room 592, where we unleash the truth and we analyze it from every possible angle. Gentlemen, starting with you, Charan, over to you.
Yog, and I'm asking Selwyn to offer a comment on the same part that I'll be addressing now. Let us say the no confidence was passed validly on the 21st of December, 2018. Article 106.6 says, President and Cabinet must resign. Article 106.7 says, the government shall remain in office and within 90 days an election should be held and they shall resign when a president is sworn in. Now, that does not need explanation, but some people do not understand President and Cabinet must resign. That, I explained that in detail on one of my posts. The Cabinet involves all the senior ministers, Simona Brooms, Annette Ferguson, Jaipal Sharma, and all these junior ministers were not members of Cabinet, but they were government. So they were not in Cabinet. The reason Cabinet had to resign, the article says that, 106.6 says that, President and Cabinet, because you cannot or should not have been in a position to pass major deals. A minister is only allowed to pass a $20 million deal maximum. Cabinet can go billions. So that illegality was overlooked, or they continued to push themselves. They did not resign. Some people want to know, well, if you're going to have a government, as 106.7 says, you got to have a head. Well, that is what the word caretaker, which is not in the Constitution, comes in. The word caretaker would mean you are taking care of the affairs of state. Now, let's just say they didn't want to do that, which again, to me, I'm still thinking it's illegal. Once Parliament is dissolved, Yog, once Parliament is dissolved, my viewers and my friends out there, it means there is no Parliament, so there is no membership. There, no member of parliament has a seat and therefore ought to have been out of parliament and therefore out of jobs. In Canada recently we had election. Prime Minister now still was then Justin Trudeau. During after parliament was dissolved and the election campaign was going on, he was referred to as Liberal leader Trudeau, not Prime Minister Trudeau. So we need, and later on I'm sure based on the itinerary that you have for the discussion tonight, we will talk about what are some of the changes we're looking at. But what happens when parliament is dissolved? My view is there is no minister, there is no president, there's no parliamentarian, and nobody should have been paid. The legality of all of that must be brought to the front line here and discussed or dealt with. That is my take on those little pieces, Yo.
Thank you. So Selwyn, I would like you to throw in your legal weight behind it, sir. And I would like, because I appreciate that we got to dissect it from two perspectives. One is, let us just imagine March 2nd forms a different paradigm. So March 2nd, elections, election day, and coming forward this way. And the other paradigm that I want you to attach, sir, is September 30th, 2019, when the CCJ said you are a caretaker government. How should the taxpayers, or how do the people of this country view contracts entered into by government from those 2 days, sir?
Well, there are 3 dates to look at, Dr. Mahadio. There's a September date from the CCJ. There's a date when the president of Guyana at the time issued the proclamation or the writ for election. And then there's March 2nd, 2020. So when you're right, when the government was in caretaker mode, it was simply to take care of the necessities of the state and nothing more, not to get into extensive contracts, not to act as though it was governing in the normal course. But significantly, when the president dropped the writ, which is where the significant problem started, when the president dropped the writ, there should have been no appointments. There should have been no appointments. There should have been no major contracts, none of that. And yet the government at the time continued to make appointments to state agencies. Yet they continued to enter into significant contracts.
Right.
None of that should have occurred. March 2nd, 2020, after the election took place, you know, what took place after that was absolutely wrong for the past 5 months. Absolutely wrong, including the major contract for the hospital, for the alleged hospital that was entered into the billions of dollars in state resources. That was wrong. You spoke about the issue of people in government accommodations.
Yes.
In the same manner that the president at the time, David Dr. Granger, and the prime minister had to vacate their residence, Varun Mahadio and all of them have to leave their homes. He wrote quite a lengthy missive as though he was entitled to continue living. He lived 5 years free in a government accommodation. The government has changed. He was given 72 hours to vacate, and he wrote a lengthy missive as though he would gain public sympathy. You're right. You don't gain public sympathy when you campaign vigorously, when you were quite political and you've lost, and you still want to live off the largesse of the state. That is absolutely not acceptable. Leave. Your best by date is over.
Thank you for that. So Selwyn, and then Charan, the issue we therefore have is twofold. One is that from my perspective, I see these dramas as a lose-lose. As you rightly said, Selwyn, some of it is being done to probably earn people's sympathies, but the game has gone on so long that you're actually losing even whatever little bit is left. That's one. But two, Selwyn, how careful would the PPC government have to be to tread that thin line between accusations of victimization versus doing what is right? Forget what the people want, but what is morally, legally right. Sorry.
Well, let's go back to 2015. If you remember, when the PPPC lose the election, Joseph Harmon went on radio, television, and in print media, and he said, look, all the government vehicles, you have this period, 72 hours grace period. You just drop the government vehicles and the keys off in front of the ministries. You know, you just vacate offices, and you had that with even the information commissioner who was in the office of the president. He was immediately evicted from the offices that he had. So when you speak about the terms of office for political appointees, their terms of appointment ends when their political masters leave, right? So when I saw the crying about the 82 persons in the office of the president who were given notices, you know, the current government has the right to terminate anyone's employment. If you're a political appointment, there's no notice. Your tenure is up when your political master's tenure is up, so you leave. If you're a public servant and you engage in partisan politics, whereas the trust is broken, the issue is severance. So I appreciate that people will cry victimization. I appreciate that it's a difficult time to lose one's job. But I think the writing was on the wall, as Charrandass said, since November, December of 2018. And there was a long run. So your tenure is up and you have to leave.
Correct. Charan, there's another paradigm to this. Now, there is one side would be the rights of the workers. As Selwyn said, you would have to either, you know, go give termination benefits and so forth and so on to follow the law, or if somebody was a political appointee, you would have to you would have to basically let them go. But on the other side, there is a real problem, and the problem is all of these people who are arguing victimization or not. Government doesn't earn money and revenues. It's the taxpayers' money.
Yes.
It is the taxpayers' money that has everybody there. And so the argument in trying to litigate their case for public sympathy is lost because of the taxpayers' money. You're trying to fight your case in front of the taxpayers. How, forget the politics, how then is it advisable for persons who are appointed by a government to work within certain paradigms then? Is it, as Selwyn said, you know you're appointed by this government, if there is a change, pack up and be ready to leave? Or is it that you're a lawyer, sir. Is it that these people could hold on and get another leg and another limb out of the system, knowing that it's taxpayers' money? And finally, sir, part C to that question, as a taxpayer now, do I have any right to stop you from abusing my money?
Yo, let me take the first part. I'll tell you this, and to refer to Canada, for example, or maybe even India, the High Commissioner to Guyana, Canadian High Commissioner, or the Indian High Commissioner to Guyana, they're not political appointees. So when the Trudeau government had changed, remember the High Commissioner, Mr. Lillian Chatterjee, was still there. Sorry, Miss Lillian Chatterjee was still there. So happened that after election, the Liberal Party became was returned to power, and so it seemed as if, well, nothing was wrong with that. But she was not recalled because she was not a political appointee. With us in Guyana, all the heads of missions in the foreign countries are political appointees. Who wants to say differently? I don't know. But why then have they all been recalled in the past? And we know that. So what is happening is, if you are appointed illegally, politically, when your political party is removed from office, it's safe to say that you also need to give up your job. So it's not victimization, and it is not that we are coming after you by way of witch hunting, if you want to use those terms. Your time is up. It's that simple. The question is, and the other example I want to use is, the Attorney General incurred millions of dollars in cost, court costs. Cost was ordered by the judges and the CCJ and the Court of Appeal. They have not been paid by the Attorney General. So remember, those are costs against the Attorney General or the government of Guyana. With the new government coming in now, Anil Nandal, who was on the kicking end, is now on the receiving end. So as Attorney General, he would have to pay those costs to the lawyers. Basil Williams did not pay.
Technical question for you then.
Yes.
Interesting point you have raised there. To you and Selwyn, a technical question. Is there a possibility that the courts can be approached to say, okay, a Basil Williams or an Attorney General acted for his political party, and so the charges being levied against the state did not belong to the state or do not belong to the state?
Selwyn, go first.
Well, you have to remember what the order says. It says jointly and severally. So it's three different parties: Ms. David, Joe Harmon on behalf of the party, and the state of Guyana as it was through the Attorney General. So it's not that the state will bear the entire burden of the cost. As a matter of fact, because it's jointly and severally, quite frankly, the litigants can exhaust Ms. David's asset, exhaust Joseph Harmon's assets, and then go to the Attorney General or the state to put in the rest.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Right. My take on that is, for example, Joe Harmon, even the Basil Williams Attorney General, the charges that were filed, and then they counterfile or they file the appeal, for example, it's their responsibility. But the question would be, is he filing, or has he filed as Attorney General or as Basil Williams? And so that would have to be decided whether or not he had the legal right to file as Attorney General. Was he the Attorney General or on behalf of the Attorney General? Then who then pays for this? Basil Williams filed. Should Basil Williams pay or should the Attorney General pay? And those are issues. I think Selwyn said, yes, jointly and severally is the term you would use, because it's like if you're filing a civil action, you're in a car accident, and you come to me as a lawyer, I will file against let's just say you hire a driver to run your car. I will file an action against you, the owner, against the insurance company, and perhaps against the man who was driving also, so that somebody has to pay for the person he hit on the road. That is how you operate in a civil matter. You just want to cover your bases so nobody's left out. In this case, again, it is something that has to be decided. Why should taxpayers pay for the stupidity that went on, that was propelled by and I described them a long time ago as hungry lawyers? And I have no apologies for saying that, because as a doctor, doctors have often said, we have a 50-50 chance. Many times they might have been wrong. Lawyers ought to tell your client, look, we have a slim chance in this or that, and then decide if they're going to let the client decide, you want to go forward, well, fine, we will go. We'll take the chance on the 50-50 or the 60-40, whatever it is. Give them a clean, honest opinion on the strength or weakness of their case. That is what should have happened, and this thing would not have gone. 33 in the no confidence is a majority of 65. No, it's not. We have to go to do this and do that, and then look how far that went. 33 is not greater than 32, but 34 is bigger than 33. Still a one-seat majority. But lawyers took that to the apex court.
Right. So Selwyn, a question for you. Let us forget everything in the past. Let's focus on March 2nd, 2020. Let's focus probably coming forward down the line. After the CARICOM chairman, then Mayor Motley would have said statements, for example, like there are forces in Guyana that does not want to see, you know what was said. From then on, Selwyn, the government would have saddled the taxpayers with costs. Simple example would be taking out a full-page ad in a Trinidadian newspaper. When those bills come now to hit whoever is now the incumbent, if you are the incumbent, Mr. Selwyn Pieters, if you are now the government of Guyana, what would be your reaction to those bills?
Well, it depends on who incurred the cost and for what purpose. If the cost, for example, in the Trinidadian papers, that was smack politicking in the face of court judgments and court hearings. Mm-hmm. So that was political as opposed to the necessity of state. So right. I wouldn't believe that the state would have the burden to bear that cost. Mm-hmm. Right? So in that case, I don't think that if it was the Guardian that it was publishing, I don't think the Guardian can come after the state to right. bear that cost.
So my point, the point of my question, Selwyn, is can you expand a little bit? The contractor needs to be aware of the state of the contractee, right? Did I get it right? In other words, the person who are entering into a contract with the government, they need to know and would have been aware because it is public news that this government is an illegitimate government. Does that place any claim for payment then on the serious microscopic examination?
Yes, it does. And that's why we spoke, we're not speaking about the ad in the Trinidadian newspaper, but we delved into the issue of the COVID hospital earlier.
Right. That's where I want to come. Yes.
Right, and a number of other a number of major contracts, including Ogle, including the properties at Ogle, and yes. any number of things that the government rushed to do during the period between March 2nd and August 2nd. Mm-hmm. I mean, most of those contracts that they enter into, because of the state of the government at the time, most of those contracts could be overturned, and courts would overturn them because, quite frankly, there was no legal footing or basis to enter into those contracts.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And let me just acknowledge the message from a name that I think, Charan, you would recognize, Mr. Gobind Harbajan.
Yes.
He has shared an opinion that, dear Yog, I am a strong believer if persons are appointed politically at any government or ministry office level by their political parties, and if the government changes, then one should not complain once you receive your letter from your peers that your service is no longer needed.
He said that?
So, yes. So that is good. And Mr. Harbajan, thank you for sharing that. I want to just take a moment on this same point of legality versus illegality, because Selwyn, I shared an opinion today on social media, and I'm going to take you right back to this hospital we have on the East Coast. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who have not heard, the owner of the hotel, what was once Ocean View Hotel, claims that rent is due to him. That rent is $156 million per year, $13 million per month, and that he needs whatever rent is due to him within 14 days. I wonder, in passing, how much notice he gave during this 155 days. That being said, he said that the property was valued in October gone, for 2.7 billion Guyanese dollars. Now, my pointed question to you, Selwyn Pieters, even though you answered generally, my pointed question about this hotel. Should should the gentleman not have been concerned into getting in a contract with an illegal government? Is it not a matter of almost is it not a matter of, because an illegal contract can never see the light of justice. And the old legal paradigm is one should not be allowed to benefit from the fruits of a crime. Selwyn, over to you, sir.
Well, he is saying that the contract was entered into $156 million per year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, certainly, I know that the current government has appointed a 4-member team to look into a whole bunch of government agencies and bodies. This $156 million, there's obviously going to have to be a valuation to see whether that was value for money, whether the contracts with the other contractors for various services were valued for money. And I heard the health minister made a comment today with respect to that hospital. So yeah. It seemed to me that the person who entered into this, if it's a contract in writing, it's going to be the subject of litigation, mm-hmm. And they're going to be looking at whether there was any legal lens put to the contract and all number of things with respect to that contract. But I mean, he can cry about his $156 million a year. My understanding is that property was in receivership, and that the banks were going to foreclose on it. So,
mm-hmm.
I don't
put a bail amount.
Yeah, I don't know if this guy has a leg to stand on.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Mr. Charrandass Persaud, I want to bring you back home to politics.
Yeah, you.
We had Mr. Kemar Ramjatan a couple of days ago in room 592 for a couple moments. Among the many things he would have said would have been that there is a standing agreement between the AFC and APNU, between
60-40.
Yes. Yes. That is now down to 70-30, right? So, Charan, give me your history with the AFC. I know we discussed some of this before. Freddie Kissoon expressed an opinion that the 9 seats or so being given to AFC is an absolute total waste of time. What is Charan's response?
Yo, I don't know. This is the first time I'm hearing of a coalition in the opposition. I know parties form a coalition to literally beat out the other party so that they can be in power, literally to run the affairs of the state. So what's the point having you sitting there as a coalition? You're still AFC, APNU like you were from 2011 right through to 2015. When the coalition was signed on the 14th of February 2015, it was then that you became a unified group. But right. I don't know that 70-30 would even be honored by the APNU government. If they believe that that's going to happen, we only have a matter of days to wait and see when they sit in parliament. Because what is the point? And Freddie is usually not wrong on those things. What is the point having a coalition that is sitting in opposition? You're all together opposition members anyways, whether you're a coalition or you're an AFC group and an APNU group. But to say that they're going to get this 30%, the 30 split, 70-30 split, that is something, honestly, I want to see. And Yog, before I depart from this particular question, let's back up a little bit on something as far as this, we were talking about the spending.
Yes.
I would like to believe that exorbitant, unnecessary, wasteful, if you want to use the term, spending ought not to be condoned, and there has to be some type of legality against it. In the no confidence, and the reason I'm saying no confidence, I was directly involved there, and so I have been paying attention to the details of that, or all the hearings. You know that the APNU flew in about 6 or 7 members of parliament, kept them at hotel to go to the CCJ to do what? They were not part of the legal team. They are the legal team separate, but they were there to give moral support. To what? That again is money. Lots of money was spent on those trips. For the moral support for these standbys, nothing else. So again, when you go through these things, as they have done in this hotel, as the former Minister of Health prior to Walter Lawrence, Mr. George Norton, when he rented that building in Albistown for $12.5 million a month to store drugs. And when it was examined after the speaker got involved in parliament, it was examined, there were a couple of boxes inside there only, and they were paying 12.5 million. So it's, to me, a way to hand out money to cronies, to party supporters. That is all I can see, and I think that ought to be deemed illegal. There must be a way to stop that type of nonsense.
Sharon, meaning no insult, no deference, no negativity to any of Guyana's former presidents. Guyana seems to have a unique perspective. Former presidents remain in politics, active politics. We have had the case where Barra Jagdev is now very active back in politics, and Granger has signaled that he may very well consider returning to parliament in the opposition umbrella. What are your thoughts on these two gentlemen? And I rather suspect that had Barrett not been active in the government, Granger might have said, well, let me walk and go away. But he probably wants to prove a point that he can come back too.
Yog, as far as the coming back of, let's take it from here and we can go back a bit, of Dr. Barra Jagdev. I am seeing this whole thing as the parent of the child, or the father of the children. If you had left them on their own, they were still not able to walk properly, so they'd stumble. And that is my view of what the Honorable Dr. Barra Jagdev did. Because, for example, as opposition leader, he did not take the salary that was afforded to the opposition leader. He was in receipt of his pension. And his pension as president was a lot more than what monies could have been paid as leader of the opposition. So even now, as vice president, we would have to look at, you're being paid a parliamentary salary. I think the choice is between taking a salary like Gail Teixeira, Frank Anthony, and all of them who were ministers in the PPP era prior to 2015, they were not receiving parliamentary salary. As an MP, backbencher, or opposition MP, you were getting $260,000 a month. That's it. So if your salary as a minister was, say, $700,000, that would be your pension if you have served so many years in parliament. So you're going to take your pension. And there's no law that stops a member of parliament who is still a member of parliament from receiving the pension that they were entitled to when they were in parliament before. So again, simply put, Dr. Jagdev has been receiving his pension. He's back in parliament and choose to take pension instead of salary.
Yes.
There's no law stopping that.
Yeah, and let me just amplify this for viewers and listeners. To Barra Jagdev's credit, while he returned to parliament as opposition leader, he did not take a parliamentary salary. He said, I'm already receiving a pension as a former president, and so I will forego. So there was no double dipping. There was no
that's right.
Nothing he did there. So that is distinctive. So Selwyn, I want to ask you a peculiar question here, sir. You have been, if I'm not using the wrong words, you have grown up within the arms of the PNC. You have seen the PNC leaders in operation. Selwyn, is there a likelihood that a man like Selwyn Pieters could one day come back to Guyana and say, you know what, let's rebuild the PNC. Let us get things going the way it ought to be. The reason I ask you this, Selwyn, PPP will only be as good as there would be a good opposition. A one-sided affair can do no country any good, right?
Yeah.
So your thoughts, Selwyn?
Yeah, I'm not political. If I was political, I had the opportunity between 2015 and 2018 to move back to Guyana and enjoy the largesse of the APNU AFC being in power. As you know, I acted on a few commissions of increase, and I did some work for the government. 99% of which I didn't take a salary or take any benefit from the government, except for the police driver and the car and that sort of stuff. But in terms of coming back to Guyana and serving in a political party, namely the PNC, that seemed impossible to me. That's not something that I could anticipate. I see myself mostly as, even though I have close relationships with the PNC, even though most of my family are PNC, I also have relationships within the PPP and other political parties. My brain kind of tells me that I'm neutral, that I'm objective, that I simply want to see fairness, justice, impartiality, and fair play. So I can't see myself getting involved in the PNC unless it's a cat, unless the entire structure right now, the superstructure and the structure that underlies it fundamentally changes.
But you know how many young men like you thinking the same thing today, sir? You know how many young men like you are thinking, and you know one of the things, another credit you could say for Barry Jagdeo, at the risk of being very unpopular in his own party, he decided to bargain with youngsters. He decided that I'm going to bank the future of this country upon a handful of younger, not necessarily very young, but younger people. And I dare say, I think what he has done is keep tabs with the older people so that they also continue to serve. Selwyn, I would like to think that men like you, ought one day, should think there is no way the apple cart will be upset unless you come and you put your big toe on it and give it a push. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to place Mr. Selwyn Pieters in more discomfort. In fact, I want to go back to this thing and ask Mr. Charrandass Persaud to please retain Selwyn Pieters' legal services for free now, because I'm going to ask Mr. Charrandass Persaud some very hard questions. Selwyn, may I ask you to give him your service in case he puts himself in trouble? Charrandass Persaud, APNO AFC Radio, APNO AFC Airways, still call Charrandass Persaud a traitor. The PPPC people see Charrandass Persaud as a savior. However, there is still the matter of accusation that somebody paid Charrandass Persaud off. Mr. Persaud, were you paid off?
An emphatic no. I will also add that the vote of no confidence was tabled on the 16th of November 2018 by the opposition leader then, Dr. Barry Jagdeo. That man, the only time he spoke to me was November 1st, 2019, when he came to Canada to have a public meeting. And all he said was, Charan, I will mention you in my speech. It was not, hello, Charan, how you do? He does not speak to me. And I said it so many times, I will repeat for the sake of reminding people that we have never been friends. I've never called this man BJ or Bharat. I've always said Mr. Jagdeo because we have never been friends. And he does not speak to me when we're in Parliament. And I'm guessing that all of that were results of, or because of, what happened on the campaign trail in 2011 and 2015. Because I was very vocal, I was very abusive, if you want to use the term. It was mudslinging for people campaigning in politics, still is in Guyana, mudslinging. And he did his stint, I did my stint, and the animosity was there. But I don't know that that is why he doesn't speak to me. He has his own clique and his own friends, and I think he's a very nice person generally, but politically, Yog, Mr. Jagdeo, Dr. Jagdeo, and I never even talked. Never even talked about what will you do if we table a no confidence motion. None of that ever happened. Once the no confidence was tabled, we were in the budget debate from the 3rd of December 2018 right through to the 14th of December 2018. And it was from 10 in the morning to 11, 12 at night, 5 days for the week. And then you get a weekend to breathe and then you come again. And then the following Friday, which was the 21st of December 2018, was the no confidence. No time at all. And then there was accusation that I was paid. I went to Trinidad to collect 15 million TT money. That would be like 2 million US. I couldn't leave the country then. So these people who are jumping around with their allegations, and you know what? Most of that came from Nagamutu and Ramjatan, because they wanted to find cause. They wanted to find reason. They fabricated reason to say why Charrandass literally, and let's just use the term, crossed the floor. I didn't cross the floor. I simply opposed them.
Sharon, I want to follow up that with another question on this point. I'm sorry to be harping back on the past, but you know, the past is important for us to relive sometimes and learn from it. It is believed by many people in Guyana that had you not voted the way you voted with your conscience, that there were others that were going to vote that similar way. But the problem is, after seeing you being dealt those curses and the I will, you know, you're dead tonight kind of threats and
the right swing.
Yeah, right. That after seeing you start to receive those blows in Parliament, that the rest who might have voted with their conscience got cowarded. Their conscience got cowed into a corner. Is there any truth to such assertions being made?
Yog, I have never had any discussion with anybody. My brother-in-law, who used to drive me to Parliament, I sent him home and I didn't tell him why. I said, look, take the apples and grapes and go. You will share as we normally do to the kids in the backyard and the back houses in the street. But I didn't want anybody to know. My brothers and sisters over here did not know that I was going to do that, because up to then, and honestly, I'm saying this again publicly, up to then, it was looking at the debate and listening to these people talk. And then I finally decided, you know what, I have to do something about this. But nobody else that I knew of ever had a discussion with me or mentioned even supporting the no confidence.
Hold a second. So, Sharon, the last time we had you on this program, this is a little while back, you did walk us through your frustration that you had basically been reduced to a yes man, not your yes vote, but you know, in
right, yeah,
and stuff like that. Sharon, one of our viewers sent this question in. What was the turning point? What was the burning moment that made Sharon say enough of this crap? What was that one thing that you would say in Parliament that night? Because I presume that you didn't walk in there prepared to say yes. Is my presumption correct that when you were in seat, you decided enough of this? What was it at that moment that made you say enough of this?
When you listen to the debate, and it's all in the Hansard, who wants to go and do that, you can request a copy and you will get it. Yeah. When you listen to Joe Harmon's debate, all he was talking about was, this man is the leader of the opposition and he lied to the world. He never married the lady. He is claiming that he had a wife and he never married. He lied to the lady. Now, if you are debating a confidence motion, as a government member participating in this debate, should you not have stood up there and give the people who are listening, present your argument to show that, look, these are reasons why you must have confidence in this government. We developed this, we did that, we built this, we presented the people with this, that, and the other, instead of literally going into the mudslinging at that stage. He was stopped by the speaker. And I said, these are the people. But what I also had at the back of my mind, and that did not change at all, was the statement made by Valda Lawrence to me earlier in the day. If anybody think they go cross the floor, I gonna kill them myself. I gonna just throw that so-and-so, and she used the words, over the balcony right now. Now, I don't know that she was looking at me, but the debate did not give me any encouragement to stay with a bunch of people that I had absolutely no respect for. Because All they were looking for, all that they were looking was what we can do. We got this, we got that. What do you have? And you know, it was frustrating for me to sit there and listen to a nonsense debate instead of coming with a no nonsense argument.
Gotcha. Selwyn, sir, you did a lot of work in Guyana for a number of years. You did work, especially what struck me, notwithstanding your being working within the commission, a number of commissions we have had. What struck me was your interest in wanting to see reform in the prison system, the prison sector, Selwyn. What got your interest going in that area that made you take up that call? And what would you say to President Ali now?
Well, to be quite frank with you, I didn't anticipate getting involved in the prison inquiry. It was President Granger actually that called me through Joseph Harmon and asked me to leave. I remember the phone call. I was in my office. The phone call came in about 2 o'clock and asked me to come to Guyana to handle the prison inquiry. They were concerned about the human rights and other implications from the fire and deaths. And I said, when do you want me to come? And they said, well, if you can get here tomorrow, we would appreciate it. So I dropped everything in Toronto and was in Guyana the next morning. I took the overnight flight and got there. When I got there and I met with the prison directorate, the senior prison officers, the junior prison officers, and prisoners, I was appalled at what I saw were the conditions for both prison officers and prisoners. The conditions at the Wood prisons were just atrocious, they hadn't even met the minimum standards. So I toured all the prisons in Guyana, and it was the same thing, whether it was Mazaruni or New Amsterdam or Lusignan. And so I took a strong position, even though I was representing the government, took a strong position with respect to what needed to be done. Unfortunately, the government didn't follow the recommendations. And there was a prison fire in 2017, and there was another recent one in Lusignan in 2020. So, I mean, if we're moving to, or if we're purporting to be a humane country, a country that treats all its citizens, even the ones that are bad, or the ones that have broken the laws, with decency, with respect, we need to ensure that the conditions of our prisons meet at least the minimum standards. And so I would ask Dr. Ali and his Minister of Public Security now and his cabinet to look into the recommendations of the prison inquiry and to look into other commission reports, tear down these inhumane prisons and build proper brick prisons. I understand that may not be on top of the priority right now, but if the oil prices go up, and if Guyana makes a windfall from the oil, then the government will have a lot of money at its disposal to do a number of things, and it should focus on reforming the prison system, whether it's the human resources capacity, whether it's the rehabilitative aspects. All aspects should be looked at.
Great. Thank you for that. Charan, I want to take your mind to Gaisuku.
Mm-hmm.
You were a voice that agitated for workers' rights, for the maintenance of sugar at least a particular level. Unfortunately, it's been decimated. It's been torn apart. Can sugar come back?
There's a lot to do with sugar, you know. We have done nothing except plant, harvest, process, and sell our brown sugar. These little packets that you get in stores are money makers. You can do we have never ever went behind sugar to use byproducts, things that could have been generated from sugar itself. And so right now, what do we have? You know that people are looking at beet sugar, some people are using honey, and a lot of people are not even using sugar in tea. There are other forms that you will put your sugar, but so there's a definite drop in the demand for sugar. But you can move out of the actual product that you're selling, the brown sugar to people. We need to look at sugar. And I think, honestly, I honestly believe that there is still a market for cane sugar and products from the cane, not just sugar alone. We can do these things. They're talking about gas, get into the it's used as fertilizer in some areas, and all kinds of things you can do with it.
But at this time, let me just ask you a question. On one hand, there is the great need of the people of this country, especially in the COVID-19, especially after a lot of the sugar workers for the past what amount of years or months, they have not received any money, right? So you have that need, the human need on one hand. On the other hand, you have an empty treasury. It is going to take not just guts and glory, it is going to take a lot of money to start to get those mills turning again. So, Charan, under that circumstance, then, do you see that the PPP government might have a tremendous challenge to meet an expecting population versus its ability to do so?
Let me say this right now. You know better than I do. The Guyanese people, many of these Guyanese people can hardly afford to eat. The sugar estates were closed since 2017. Then with COVID now, people have been laid off. Stores have not been open to people. And again, where do you get money? You don't have unemployment benefits in Guyana. You don't have any source of income except what you earn. And if you're going to plant in your backyard, you're not going to make money on that, because what do you plant in your backyard? It's barely enough to give you a few meals and provide you with, as we will say, some curry. But that is one of the biggest issues. This government is not taking the country at level or from a level ground. They're buried. They have to come out of the hole and then start from level ground. So that cleaning up, or if we can use legal terms and say the country is in the negative. To get rid of the negative and then move on to put the country in a positive, it's not going to be easy. It is not going to happen overnight. And some of us who are in Guyana may say, look, now a month done and they haven't done anything, or 6 months have done and we still can't get jobs yet. It is not going to happen overnight. My brothers and sisters out there, many of you are watching, pass the word along. Let us give this new government some time. It is a major cleanup that is necessary. And as it is, when you take over, we can see what we want to see now. Let's just say you go pick up Minister of Agriculture. My good friend Zulfikar is the Minister of Agriculture. When you go and say that you think you can start from scratch, or you're on a level ground and you can proceed from there. No, I am betting my money, the $20 that I have, that you're in the hole and you have to dig out of that hole. Then you can say, well, look, we can do things for agriculture. It is not going to be easy. Billions of dollars. We passed $300.7 billion in 2018 December for the 2019 budget. That money was done, used up. Where's the development? Then they're in the hole in excess of $100 billion. Why should they be borrowing money during their illegal term? That is, again, money that this government that is taking over, Mr. Ali, President Ali and his team, they would have to find ways to pay those monies back. That is what is facing the government.
Correct. And that being said, Selwyn, as I come over back to you on a matter of your thoughts on politics here, let me just say this, ladies and gentlemen. If one looks at, like Florida in the United States, sugar is a good crop, profitable. It's all in private hands, yes, but it is profitable. In other words, to Charan's point, if planned properly, if prioritized well and having the right people in place, then maybe, given the will of the population and the politicians, it can happen. Selwyn, Mr. Anil Nandlal is the Attorney General, Minister of Legal Affairs, once again. he promised that among the priorities would be some degree of legal reformation and things that he wants to look at. He didn't go into much details. Of course, I've invited him to join us in room 592 one day, but you know, they're busy, and you know, let's see how that would go. But Selwyn, what, if you can, is there one or two focus area you would like to see the Attorney General put his mind to within a short order, sir?
Well, with COVID-19, we've seen with the various legal challenges, we've seen the court was forced to push itself into the 21st century by adopting to technology, right? We were all privileged to have seen the hearings via Zoom and you know, that sort of thing. So one of the things that he'll probably have to look at is the court being more technologically adept, documents being able to be properly tendered electronically, commission of oaths and affidavits could be done electronically or virtually, as opposed to someone having to come to an office to do it. There probably much needed criminal justice reform that needs to take place. You know, Guyana, if you go through the list of the Demoira assizes and the Berbice assizes and the Essequibo assizes, you see long lists of cases going back, some of them decades, that are waiting to be tried. Certainly, the criminal justice system needs to be reformed in some way. Civil litigation as well. So Mr. Nandala spoke about a number of legislation that they were contemplating bringing in that wasn't brought in because of their minority government status when he was Attorney General. He now has a majority in Parliament, and certainly he can push through an aggressive agenda to bring much needed reform to the criminal and civil justice system.
Yes.
Guyana property law is one of the oldest property law. It's based on Roman Dutch law. When I was at Hugh Wooden Law School, there was a special course for Guyanese lawyers because Guyana property law is so unique.
Right.
You know, there's lots of things on the agenda. I hope he got into the office. I read yesterday that he was locked out of the office. I hope he's received the keys by now.
Yes. I what I heard was that Mr. Anil Nandlal was indeed locked out of the Attorney General's office, but he did receive the key after he got the police there to say, look, we got to get into the office anyhow. Somehow or the other, the keys did turn up through some sources. So that was kind of not a funny moment, but you know, it was still a little bit funny. Selwyn, it is interesting what you said there. Yes, he has to turn his mind to some of these things. Gentlemen, wasn't CPR 2016 designed to reform the entire court procedures and make it speedier and make it less burdensome on the litigants and stuff like that? Would you say that it achieved its aim, even if not, but partially?
Yoga, if I may,
yes.
After it was introduced, the new civil procedure rules, it helped to fast track cases that have been filed from then, because you're now filing cases based on the new CPR. But what happens to those that have been sitting for, as Selwyn said, decades? Land matters, when people talk about land matters, oh God, I think I can die before that case come up. That is so true. That is so true. So the CPR now, it's moving the new cases that are filed. And we have had the case management conference in the recent matters that were filed in this election thing. So you sit down, you talk of this, and you make an agreement to get in and get out. They're finished real quickly because they're dealt with expeditiously. But the old ones are still sitting. And then when you go back to them, you know, you still have to dig up all these things. And frankly, the backlog is too much. And as Selwyn rightly said, the same thing for criminal appeals. If I am appealing a matter based on the appeal, let's see quickly. There's a case called Scantlebury, and it's a very popular case on appeal. What Scantlebury says is you should be granted bail pending the hearing of your appeal, because let's just say you're asked to serve an 18-year jail term for rape. And when you get the hearing in the appeal court, it is deemed that you were not really guilty, and the appeal was granted, and so you're set free. But all the years that you spent waiting for that appeal to be ventilated in the Court of Appeal were years that you should not have been in jail. So that is why Scantlebury said, grant you bail pending the hearing of the appeal. So you're out, and when the appeal comes up, because right now there's a particular rape case that I know been sitting, bail was not granted, the boy is sitting in lockup, and there's all kinds of controversies over the actual act itself. But he was found guilty. But again, 4 years have gone by, and the appeal has not yet been ventilated. And my bet is, because I'm familiar with the case, he's going to be found not guilty, but he will have served 4, 5, maybe 6 years, 7, 8, 9, or 10 years before the appeal is ventilated and he's granted his freedom. So these things need to be fast-tracked. Give them some more time to get out, in and out.
Thank you. Selwyn, in terms of, let's say over the next 5 years for this new government, should they, in comparison with Canada, for example, pay a lot of heed to development of laws with regards to cybercrime? Because we have seen during these last elections, for example, well, cybercrime takes many forms, but we have seen, cyberbullying, we have seen threats, we have seen a lot of things over these election periods. Should that be one of the areas of focus for this government?
Yes, the government should have a robust cybercrime laws, and as well the police. The police should be the police should have a cybercrime unit. Like even in Toronto here, we have the police. We have police officers that are specifically designated to deal with Twitter. Specific officers deal with Facebook. Specific officers deal with Instagram, and so we have people that are arrested and in very short order for threats and various other things that occur in social media. In Guyana, people seem to think it's a free-for-all where you can say what you like and do what you like on social media. I mean, I've had to deal condignly with a doctor in England who imposed himself in Guyana politics, Dr. Mark Devonish. I've had to sue him and the Guyana Chronicle, simply because Dr. Devonish seemed to think that he can come on social media and libel and slander anyone without consequences, and the belief that no one would take him on. I've taken him on both in court, and I'm taking him on with respect to his profession. You know, you have a profession,
right?
You have to respect civility, and civility seems to be lacking when people come on social media.
Correct. So indeed, and I'm hoping when we get Mr. Nandlal, I'll ask him exactly about some of these questions. Ladies and gentlemen, let me remind you, unfortunately, Mr. Leonard Gildari has been unable to join us tonight, but he is part of the program. He is viewing, he is there. And so his apologies for being so unable to join. And I must say, he was simply unable to join. Kevin Smith can bear me out with this. And Leonard, if you're listening, Leonard was simply unable to join tonight, Charrandass and Selwyn, because his wife has prepared such a good dinner for him that she said, listen, you have to choose between this dinner or between Yog, Charrandass, and Selwyn. And of course, we know what was his choice. Ladies and gentlemen, let me also remind you that tomorrow night, we'll be talking Trini politics. We'll be talking Trinidadian politics in room 592. And our guests will be Mr. Wesley Gibbons from Trinidad and Tobago, a media personality, very respected media personality all across the Caribbean, but he's in Trinidad and Tobago. And Mr. Oren Gordon, Guyanese-born Mr. Oren Gordon, who resides in Trinidad and Tobago, and of course, well-known Caribbean political expert, Mr. Peter Wickham. These three gentlemen will be joining us in room 592 tomorrow night to talk about Trinidadian politics. Why? Because on Monday, as you know,
election.
Is it Monday? But on August 10th, yes. On Monday, August 10th is the Trinidadian elections. And of course, we having gone through what we did here for our elections, the word elections now sounds like a nightmare to us. And so we want to see how the Trinidadians are making out with their elections. And if they're planning to cater for 155 days thereafter, but we don't think so. Tomorrow will certainly be an interesting discussion with them. Let's get back to our two guests here tonight. Mr. Charrandass, Persaud, sir, as we are going to come to the closure of our program, I would like you to address a couple of two things to me. Sorry. One is that constitutional reform. There are a lot of ways the Constitution can be reformed in Guyana. Name one of the key, the principal areas that you would like to recommend for this government of Guyana.
Your constitutional reform has to happen. It was supposed to have been done by Nigel Hughes and Nagamutu in the past government, but it must happen. And anybody who was paying attention to this election and the saga or the election chaos, whatever you want to use to describe it, you need to see that there is a need for constitutional reform. For one main reason, if nothing else, enforcement of articles in the Constitution that have been violated by respective people. I don't care who you are, if it's the president, the prime minister, and now the new one. Once you violate the Constitution, the supreme law of the land, there must be consequence. But the question is, it seems as if it is easy to do, and nobody can do a thing to me if I breach the Constitution. And we have seen that unfold over time. And one of the reasons for that is some of them are saying, no, it can't mean that. For example, all votes mean all valid votes. The word valid was put in. In a majority, it has to be an absolute majority. The word absolute was put in. Why do you use words that are not in the Constitution? What were the framers' intention? And so we need to have interpretation, the actual articles themselves properly worded so that you don't have to fight with interpretation, and then legislation in place to deal with those who violate the Constitution. Why is it the supreme law of the land if you can breach and nothing happens to you? That, correct, to me, should be the main focus. There's a lot to change in the Constitution, a lot of outdated legislation, but still enforcement.
Thank you. Mr. Pieters, there is a particular part of our laws that gives the president of Guyana immunity that many other heads of state do not enjoy. Question one, the changing of that particular law, does it require the 2/3? This is just for our viewers and listeners to understand what is required to change it. And question two, do you think that the PPPC will have the guts to want to suggest such a change, or will there ever be a government of Guyana that can want to suggest such a change, sir?
Well, there would require a 2/3 majority to change the laws on immunity of a president. And I think the law on immunity of a president is important. And it certainly, I understand it doesn't really tame excesses if a president is bound to get into excesses. But what it does is it tames the urge of an incoming government to engage in a witch hunt or to prosecute a president simply because they didn't like what the president did during his or her term in office. And we saw that when President Jagdeo was dragged into Soko. He wasn't charged, but at least, you know, there was a spectacle of him being dragged into Soko for a purported investigation. Do I think the PPP will change the immunity of a president? No, I don't think the PPP will have that desire. I mean, presidents benefit. President Jagdeo benefited from that. President Orfanali will benefit from that. So I don't think there will be an urge to change the immunity clause in the Constitution. As well, the PPP doesn't have a substantial majority. The majority is a slim majority. And so I'm not going to be optimistic that there's going to be constitutional reform in the next 5 years. You have to remember what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the same people that try to hold on to power for 5 months. Well, not 5 months, since November of 2018. They form a substantial majority of the opposition.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you.
So may I fire a question at you? And I'm saying I want to be the devil's advocate here. We all know that now President Irfan Ali,
advocate, right? You're already the advocate. So now
yeah. We all know that the President Irfan Ali, Dr. Irfan Ali, is now the president. We also know that prior to him being elected as president, he was faced with 19 charges. Presidential immunity would apply to anything that the president does while he's in office.
Right.
Question. And my good brother Selwyn, the people are listening. It's actually a question that came to me just yesterday. What will happen to the charges that were laid against him before he became president?
Well, that's going to have to be a decision made by the DPP. I said before that those 19 charges against Dr. Ali were politically motivated charges. What Dr. Ali did, Guyana had an objective that it didn't distinguish between poor persons and rich persons. All state land for housing was sold at subsidized prices. They weren't sold at market value.
Right.
And so the 19 charges were political in scope. And I expect that now that there's a change in government, those prosecutors that were on that case will no longer be on the case. And the DPP will do exactly what she did with the GCOM chairman's case. She will exercise her rights under the Constitution and in law to have those charges tossed out. I mean, those charges against Anna Nandalal and Orphan Ali were clearly political.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's no reasonable prospect for conviction. Those charges should not have been hanging on their heads for so long.
In addition, just to cement that point, in addition, Selwyn, if I may put it the following way, an individual minister cannot be held liable for cabinet decision, right? Yes or no?
That's true, because cabinet decisions are collective decisions.
Mm-hmm.
It's a collectivity of decisions, and cabinet has a thing of cabinet secrecy as well. So you really don't know who push an item on the agenda, even though you may speculate on who did.
Well, here is where I had a laugh when the Irfan Ali matter came into public space, because I thought, well, if the court is now going to demand the release of cabinet papers, which are usually, as you rightly said, under immense degrees of secrecy, is it something that APNU AFC really wants? Because it means you are going to open that door to access cabinet papers, and it could mean a lot of things. But ladies and gentlemen, just to rehash this point a little bit, the charges against Irfan Ali, it was a matter of cabinet decision. And among many legal minds, including the two on screen here today, they have said that the charges against a person, a minister, cannot be held responsible for a cabinet decision. That is a collective decision. Gentlemen, it's been good to have you here. Charan, 30 seconds, my friend.
30 seconds before I say anything else, Yog. Let me take 10 out of the 30.
Yes.
To say, a hearty congratulations to Dr. Irfan Ali upon his successful bid to be the president of Guyana. He was sworn in August 2nd, and to the cabinet, the members, and I said, I've quite a team, quite a team. I have absolute confidence in that team that's there. Youngsters and some of the older heads to share whatever they know with the youngsters. But I think it'll work well for Guyana. And again, we are showing the youngsters, the youths, that you have a chance to sit in parliament here, get up, do things. The sky is the limit. And so congratulations, hearty congratulations to the entire PPP team that is going to run the country for the next 5 years. Yo, thank you for having me here. And I hope that the people who are listening to your program can at least take down some details and, you know, don't run around with what you get from what I call it, the street lawyers and the Facebook warriors. It's not what you want. Sit down and listen to people. I am not the brightest lawyer. I am not ashamed to admit that. But you will pick up a thing or two from anybody who is in a particular field. Let us do that. Thank you very much, you, and thank you, viewers. Thank you, Selwyn, my brother.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Selwyn, your 30 seconds, my brother.
I want to wish the new incoming government all the best in their 5-year agenda. Guyana has been taken through a period of uncertainty for the past year and a half. And we hope that there will be stability. We hope that the government will move quickly so that people can feel some relief. A lot of Guyanese are suffering, whether it's due to COVID-19 or due to the economic uncertainty brought by the lack of foreign investment over the past year. The government will need to move quickly so that they can assist the fear of Guyanese people and to carry out its manifesto. The important thing that this government has to do is keep its promises. Mm-hmm. You have a manifesto, you have an agenda that you put to the people will look forward to you carrying out that agenda. And if you do that, then the next election you can come before the people and you can get their confidence again. The APNU AFC forgot that and lost.
Thank you for that, Mr. Selwyn Pieters, and thank you, Mr. Charrandass Persaud. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been privileged to have our two, one young and one not so young attorneys at law. Both of these young men from Canada joining us tonight. It's been a pleasure to have you all in room 592 here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Let me remind you, tomorrow night we'll be talking Trinidadian politics, the politics of Trinidad and Tobago as they head to the polls on August 10th. That is on Monday coming, they'll be heading to it's their election day. And so tomorrow we're going to be having Mr. Wesley Gibbons from Trinidad. He's a Caribbean media personality. He will be joined by Mr. Peter Wickham, who is our political scientist active in the Caribbean, as well as Mr. Orrin Gordon, Guyanese born but Trinidadian, Mr. Orrin Gordon. Great. So Selwyn, you're coming in for the inauguration?
We were invited, me and Charrandass. We're still trying to figure out, how we could get there, but we're invited.
Beautiful. So it's been good to have you both on the program tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been our privilege to have you here in room 592 where we unleash the truth. And we'll be certainly seeing you tomorrow night from wherever you're joining us. Do have a great night. Be safe. And remember, say a prayer for this beautiful country of ours. It is still the best place on God's given planet. Ladies and gentlemen,
yes,
be safe.
Thank you.
Happy. Bye-bye now.